Welcome back to Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast. I am Russell Brown of CoverOne.net, and joining me for the first time, it feels like in forever, but my good brother, Brad Kelly. Man, how we doing?
I'm excellent. I'm happy to be back on and talking about kind of recapping the NFL Draft after all the buildup that we went through.
Yeah, I mean, all the hard work that we've done, and we didn't even get to, do a live show, which I think we needed a much-deserved break anyways, but we're going to talk about the 2018 NFL Draft simply because what else is there really to talk about? Like, we're light years away from next year's draft, and like throughout the summer, we'll do some player overviews and prospect previews and stuff like that. But I mean, we need to give the people a recap show, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to give a winner and loser from both of us. We're going to recap the first round a little bit. But before we get into any of that, I do have to tell you guys about the Cover One app that you can download today in your App Store, Google Play, wherever it is. All you have to do is search Cover One, and then you just download the brand new app. And it's not even brand new anymore. It's been out for like 2 months. So if you don't have it, you're a loser. And you need to go out and get it because you stay up to date with all our content from Brad, whatever he writes, which he's got a great series coming out throughout the summer with wide receivers, which you can talk briefly about at the end of the show. Also, you can get all the up-to-date on the podcast, which is right there at your fingertips. So download the Cover One app on your App Store or Google Play. But the round one, the whole draft's over, as we know, but round one obviously is always the topic of discussion because there's so many surprises and there's so many players that just come out of nowhere. And I think it started with Baker Mayfield going 1. I mean, we heard the rumblings of it, never really knew if it was a smokescreen or not. And then they made it official. And for the first time in a while, the number 1 pick was sealed. Nobody knew who it was really going to be. What are your thoughts on Baker Mayfield going first overall?
Right. So I think that as far as Cleveland goes, getting a personality like Baker Mayfield into their building is going to be good for them as a team as far as morale goes, and how he's kind of a natural leader. But, I talked about before, I thought that Sam Darnold was their best option, was the best quarterback in the draft, and I think would have fit in their situation better, having maybe a year to sit behind Tyrod Taylor. Now you're going to put Baker Mayfield into a quarterback controversy probably right away because Mayfield's a little bit more pro-ready. His leadership might not be as utilized as a backup if he does start the season as that. So it's kind of a weird situation. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Is he going to start week 1? Is he going to start, week 8? If Tyrod Taylor starts the first half of the season and they have some success and they're 4-4, are they going to pull Tyrod Taylor from the starting position, kind of just like Buffalo did, and put Baker Mayfield in there? We really don't know. And Andrew Hawkins, who now has a podcast, former Browns player, talked about the fact that if you take Tyrod Taylor's season from last year, as far as his touchdowns and his interception and the ratio goes, Cleveland Browns, since they restarted their franchise, has never had that. So if he puts up a season like he did last year, they're talking about potentially the best, quarterback season in Browns history. Since they restarted, that's one, kind of sad, but 2, if he does that and he gets pulled, there's going to be more controversy there. So it's going to be an interesting situation to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, too, is I never would have guessed Sam Darnold would have been the pick at number 3, which we'll get into in a moment. And, when they took and got Tyrod Taylor, I thought it was clear, okay, they're not going after Josh Rosen, which I think we can all agree, maybe not, but he is, in my opinion, the most pro-ready guy. And clearly you're not going to get that most pro-ready guy and then just sit him on the bench. But Baker Mayfield, I think, is pro-ready too, like you mentioned. And, sports betting now is that's the big topic in just the sports world. It's basically going to be legal all over. So if you were a betting man, is Baker Mayfield going to be the guy number 1? With the first game of the season?
I would say Tyrod Taylor is going to start the first game of the season just because he's a veteran presence. I think that Hugh Jackson realizes that he's probably coaching for his job this season. If they start out 0-4 with the talent infusion that they've had and with the improvements to the depth chart and all the draft picks that they've been, that they've had over the last few years, that they start out 0-4, that Hugh Jackson should have already been fired, but he'll definitely almost be fired if they start the season like that. And there's a risk to starting a rookie quarterback, and Tyrod Taylor is definitely the safer option. Mm-hmm. So I think that he starts the first a month or two of the season, and they kind of go from there to start to make decisions based on where they are in the standings. Is Tyrod playing well, or some of the positions, what they're going to do with some of the positions probably halfway through the season.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that's the same mindset I've got going into this for them. You start Tyrod Taylor, you let Baker Mayfield get a grip on the NFL and that lifestyle, and then see what happens. And I'm not saying, off the field stuff or anything like that. I believe Baker's just fine. He's a natural born leader. He's going to be just fine. I think they do have the right guy for the job as far as bringing a winning atmosphere to their team. So it'll be interesting on how he develops. What's more interesting, though, is number 4 for Cleveland, and that's Denzel Ward, which I think is a hell of a reach for a corner that he is good, but he's not as good as Marshawn Lattimore, who went 10th overall last year to New Orleans. And if anybody deserves to go at number 4, it would have been Marshawn Lattimore. Obviously, things change from year to year, but bit of a reach. Would you agree? I mean, how do you pass on Bradley Chubb or Quentin Nelson?
I think that's definitely a bit of a reach there, and I think that they would have been better off trading down had they been able to find a partner, picking up extra selections, and they still might have been able to get Denzel Ward depending on how far they traded down. Or you get a guy like the second tier of corners, guys like Jair Alexander and Isaiah Oliver, who you guys know that I loved, or even like a Mike Hughes. In like the middle of the first round, they would have been able to add selections and really not lose that much quality, maybe even not lose any quality between the corner that they would have picked up. So had they been able to find a trade partner for the 4th pick, that's what I would have done had I stayed there and selected. I mean, you guys know that I love Quentin Nelson. I probably would have went Harold Landry, but we'll get into Harold Landry later. But I think that Denzel Ward was a reach, and had they been able to trade down, that they probably should have.
Yeah. Well, and like the thing too is you look at the corners that went later in the second round. Isaiah Oliver at 58, Carlton Davis at 63. All these corners pushed down the board for a reason, and then you just sit there at number 4 and you take Denzel Ward. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I just feel like Buffalo probably gave you a phone call and said, "Hey, what do we got to give you to get to number 4?" You probably would have you passed on it clearly, but you could have went to 12 and then took Alexander, or potentially Denzel Ward would have been there, or maybe you just took Minkah Fitzpatrick. Screw it, But Sam Darnold, do we really have to get into Saquon Barkley at all at number 2? I mean,
I'd like to touch on what the Giants did. So as far as the New York Giants draft, I did not like the Saquon Barkley pick. Now, Saquon Barkley was my 2nd overall player behind Quentin Nelson. Loved Saquon Barkley. Been a fan of his since he was a freshman at Penn State. When he was a freshman, I said, this kid is the best running back in the country. My tweet is up from like 2016. I said that when he was a freshman. Love Saquon Barkley. However, I did not like them passing on a quarterback, specifically Sam Darnold at the 2nd pick, or even Josh Rosen. I did not like that. However, later on in the draft, I believe it was the 4th round when they ended up getting Kyle Lauletta. That's when I kind of realized that if you look at their draft as a whole, I really liked it. I didn't necessarily like the picks at where they went, but if you look at the class as a whole, and you add in Will Hernandez into there, I really did like the players that they got and the group of guys that they got because they were able to add Kyle Lauletta. So did not like the Barkley selection. Love the player. Did not like the pick, but I do like their overall class, which annoys me because I hate the New York Giants.
But I mean, their offense is now. I mean, it is complete. Like you add it. I mean, it's not because your offensive line still is going to suck. Like Nate Solder's a nice addition, and Will Hernandez is a nice addition, but you still lost Weston Richburg. You still lost Justin Pugh. You still have Eric Flowers, and we all know Eric Flowers is garbage. So have fun with that Saquon Barkley. Like, granted, Penn State's offensive line sucked too. Like, they were not world beaters either, but it's a different game in the NFL, and we know that. And obviously, Barkley's a different type of athlete. He's one of a kind. So, I mean, their offense, it seems more complete. Like, yeah, you have Eli way on the back end of his career. You're getting OBJ back. You do have Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, Saquon Barkley. So, I mean, their offense is going to be fun. As the kids say, it should be fire, but only time will tell. And you're right. I mean, as they did as a whole on the draft, it was good. Their first 5 picks with Lauletta, B.J. Hill, Lorenzo Carter, which in my opinion was a steal in the 3rd round, Will Hernandez, Saquon Barkley. I mean,
and R.J. McIntosh.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some really good players, and they added depth to their defensive line. B.J. Hill is going to be really good for them. McIntosh is going to be good too, or is it McIntosh or McIntosh?
It's McIntosh.
Okay, whatever. And But no, they did well. Sam Darnold at 3. I like it. I mean, they had to take him. He is your QB1, and he's not – I would not be surprised if he played like week 15 or week 16, but he should not – I don't think he should play at all. I think you just let him go through the mechanics, get that playbook down, and realistically, did the Jets even have a good draft?
So as far as Darnold goes and starting, I was actually speaking with a Jets fan friend of mine. What I would do if I was the Jets, I would start Teddy Bridgewater, and I would have McCown be the number 2 guy, and I kind of have Darnold push down the depth chart a little bit, like you said, hold the clipboard, learn for a season. But I would start Teddy Bridgewater, and I'll tell you why. If he plays like the Teddy Bridgewater of old, then you have your quarterback of the future, I would say, and then maybe you can trade Sam Darnold and get like get a king's ransom kind of for him. Now, if he doesn't play well, at least you kick the tires on it, and then you can go to McCown, kind of keep your head above water if you're Todd Bowles for the rest of the season, and then go into next year saying Sam Darnold is our guy. Maybe this year we only won 6 games, but, our guy is going to be our QB next year, and he's going to be ready. He's going to have that year of learning, and, that's probably going to keep Bowles' job. So as far as that goes, I would go Bridgewater right away, see how that works out, and then kind of go from there. As far as their whole draft goes, I would have to look at who they took.
Yeah, well, it's Sam Darnold. They didn't have a second-round pick. They had 2 second-round picks, but they traded them to the Colts.
Well, they got Shepard, too.
I
like Nathan Shepard.
Not bad. Chris Herndon, the tight end out of Miami, didn't watch too much of him, but he seems like an upside type of kid. Perry Nickerson, the corner out of Tulane. I know he had like a really scary knee injury. So 6th-round pick, it is what it is. And then the full Fatoski kid from Connecticut, D-tackle, depth. And then Trenton Cannon out of Virginia State. I have no idea. I don't know who that is. Overall, Sam Darnold's definitely like the key. And I would have to agree with you. Teddy Bridgewater should be their guy, I would think, moving forward, simply because of the fact that if he does well, he has trade value if you can re-sign him for another year.
Right, and if McCown does well, he doesn't really have that value because of his age, and this is probably his last season or second to last season. So I would go with the guy who has the potential to have value, whether on your team or whether on another team. At least you can see how it is. If he's healthy, if he's cleared to really play and start games and play every snap, he should be your guy week 1.
Yeah. Yeah, he should be, but I don't know. Only time will tell with the New York Jets, and I'm not trying to bash the Jets, but actually, yes, I am. They seem to always screw up the quarterback situation. So hopefully Sam Darnold does well for them. I think he's a very good prospect. I think he's got a lot of upside, the highest of any quarterback in the draft. So hopefully he pans out for the Jets. I don't want to go exactly pick by pick, but I think we do have to talk about Denver, though, at 5, because they had the option of Bradley Chubb, Quentin Nelson. I'm glad I wasn't in that draft room because that would have sucked. I don't think I could have picked between those two. And I guess really you couldn't have gone wrong. Did they get it right, though, with Bradley Chubb?
I would say that they did not get it right. Not that I dislike Bradley Chubb. I think Quentin Nelson's a better player. And if I was going to go an edge, once again, I would say I would have went Harold Landry. Mm-hmm. But as far as needing offensive linemen, needing to protect, I don't really want to say that they have a franchise quarterback because they don't, but I think that they might think they have a franchise quarterback. And if you do think that, you need to go out and protect him, and Quentin Nelson would have been the answer to be able to do that. Now, they have Ronald Leary at left guard, and I think he's a stud. But looking past that, their guard spots, I don't necessarily like it. They have Case Keenum. I don't know if they really think that he's the answer in the future. They also have Chad Kelly and Paxton Lynch, who are both young, have some potential. So I would have said I would have went out and tried to protect him. Put Quentin Nelson at right guard. If that was a good fit, I like the fact that they got some good receivers and Royce Freeman, who could be a good running back. They picked up Phillip Lindsay late at corner, and I think overall they also got my boy Isaac Yiadom. So I think overall they had a good draft. I just think that I would give Bradley Chubb like a B grade at the 5th pick, and I think Quentin Nelson would have been more like an A.
Yeah, well, and they needed. I mean, they've needed offensive line for a while, and they neglect the position every year, other than when they took Garrett Bowles. And they've always just kind of put tape over that offensive line and tried to make something stick, and it's not always working. It always falls apart for them. And they passed on a guy that's going to be an All-Pro in Quentin Nelson, and Bradley Chubb. I think he's going to be very good, but. You have Von Miller. Do you need really Bradley Chubb? Like, you need secondary help, guys. Like, you lost Talib. You've needed a safety since you lost TJ Ward, and like, you passed on Minka, you passed on Derwin James, and I'm not saying like take them at 5, but you could have definitely looked at going after a safety earlier in the draft. And I'm pulling up exactly what they did.
I don't know, because looking at their depth chart, I really like them taking Elam, and they still have Chris Harris and Bradley Roby at corner. Justin Simmons is a stud. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the game. I don't necessarily know how he fits next to Sua Cravens, who they picked up. But if they can find a way to have
if they picked him up, okay.
If they have a way to get both of them on the field, as well as Roby, Chris Harris, and Isaac Yiadom, that's a pretty good group. The fact that they got Yiadom late is huge, and they picked up Sua Cravens. But I think he's only on a 1-year deal, if I'm not mistaken. So
probably.
They're probably looking to the future. You're right. If they need a safety of the future and a safety that is a little bit of contrasting style to Justin Simmons, then Cravens probably isn't the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they can at least get by. Oh, he's on a 4-year deal, 3-year deal.
Well, plus he plays in the box though too. So like, right. Is that really what you're looking for? I mean, I don't know, man. Minka and Derwin, like, this safety class got compared to last year's with Jamal Adams and Malik Hooker, and everybody said that this safety class, as far as those two names, were better. And I just feel like going after and getting one of those guys would have been a smart move. But I can't disagree. You know, if Bradley Chubb or Quentin Nelson are there, you have to take one of those guys over them. So, I mean, it is what it is. Deshaun Hamilton falling to them at pick 113 is just absolutely, I think it's filthy. I think it's going to be, it's a good fit.
Steal, absolute steal. Real quick, how is Sua Cravens only 22 years old?
Dude, and he's retired already, and then he's come back. Like,
how is that possible?
I feel like he's been in the league for like 4 or 5 years. Yeah,
it's only been 2, but he must have came in the league at 20. I don't know how.
He was probably like Edmonds. He probably came in at like 19 and then played 2 years and then retired, right? Because he didn't play last year.
No, I think he did.
For part of it, and then he left. I think he something like that. But speaking of steals, Minka Fitzpatrick at pick 11. That's a steal, right? Like, yes. Miami getting clearly the best player on the board, but that's just an absolute steal. Like, we can talk. Quentin Nelson is a steal at 6, sure. Buffalo Bills passing on Josh Rosen over Josh Allen. For Josh Allen, we'll see. Roquan to the Bears, love it. McGlinchey, your boy, number 9 to the 49ers, really love the pick. We'll talk about them in the winners or loser column. The Cardinals moving up to get Josh Rosen. That I like the move. I think it was a great move, right?
Love it, yeah.
I just never would have guessed, like, doing a mock draft or just going into the draft, that Josh Rosen would have been there at 110, and then the Cardinals would have moved up. Because when we talked about the Cardinals, we talked their draft capital and how they had so little of it that right. Moving up just didn't seem like an option.
Right. I think Josh Rosen, you know, I had him as the second best quarterback in the draft. He'd get, in my opinion, the second best QB at pick 10. And a QB heavy draft is pretty crazy, and a team that desperately needed an answer at the quarterback position. So I think that was a home run, you know, even if they had to give up some pieces to move up. I think that was a great move by them.
Yeah, and like on the solo pod from Friday that I did, I talked about, you know, what the Cardinals did, and I went into detail about it because I like what they did with Josh Rosen and Christian Kirk and Mason Cole. Like, Christian Kirk's not complete. He's not as good as some of the other receivers, but like we always talked about, this draft was so heavy as far as second, third, and even fourth round receivers that it was okay to wait rather than taking a first-round receiver and take one in the middle rounds, and they did that with Christian Kirk, and it seems like it's going to be a good fit. He gets to play alongside Larry Fitzgerald. He's versatile. He can play on the outside. I think he's best suited as a slot receiver. And then you got Mason Cole as a center. So I like what they did. I thought going after defense would have been a good idea as well, but they didn't do it until the 6th round. So, I mean, it is what it is. Chase Edmonds, I think, is a reach at 134 for them. But, again, Rosen, that was the key to their draft. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the first quarterback that plays. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised.
I think that he will be. If you look at everyone else's quarterback situation, Rosen has the clearest path and is the most pro ready. So I think not only will he be, but he should be as well.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's a good fit for them. So I think it's going to be good. What about Marcus Davenport going 14th to New Orleans? Dude, like he's still very raw. And like dude, it's, you don't give up 3 draft picks to move up for a raw edge rusher when one, Harold Landry was still on the board. Marcus Davenport probably wouldn't have been there at 27, but you just don't give up next year's first round pick when you really don't know what Drew Brees has left. Like you don't exactly know that.
Right. So here's the thing is I think the Saints have a Super Bowl window. You know, I think obviously they probably should have beaten Minnesota and been in the NFC Championship game. Who knows what happens from there? So they're a team who I think is one of the 4 best teams in football this year. And what they do is not only use their first round pick this year, but really kind of, you know, take a risk and almost give up so much capital for next year's draft to take a guy who isn't ready to produce this season. So not only are they hurting their chances in the window that they have now, but they're hurting their chances in the future by mortgaging the first round pick from next season. So yeah. I think that was, you know, even if they moved up and taken a guy, even like, not necessarily going based off need, but Derwin James is available there. You know what I mean? Like Jair Alexander is available there. Isaiah Wynn, like there are guys who are better players than Marcus Davenport. Rashaan Evans was there. Better players than Davenport. You can take Harold Landry, who is definitely better than Davenport at the same position and a position of need for the Saints. Improve your chances in the window that you have now without giving up that first round pick next season.
Right.
So yeah, I did not like that move by them at all.
Yeah, and like we talk about this, like I've always said this. I think edge rushers are, even though it's a premier position, once you get to like the top of the draft, there's always like that guy, like Bradley Chubb, Myles Garrett. But this year, outside of that, there's not, you know, outside of Bradley Chubb, it was really hit or miss. And I think this is a huge miss. And like you have Sheldon Rankins, who you drafted to play as they've been playing him as an edge rusher opposite of Cameron Jordan. You want to naturally plug him inside because he's a better fit inside. And now you can't even do it because you have this raw edge rusher in Marcus Davenport. And when you look at Lamar Jackson going at 32, maybe the Ravens could have called you at 27 and said, hey, what do we need to get, you know, back into the draft for? And then you got more picks for the future. And I'm not saying, you know, they go and get a quarterback next year because we don't know what the quarterbacks are really going to be next year. Like, yeah, they could maybe go out and get Justin Herbert. Well, they could have, but they don't have a first-round pick now. So now, you know, it's such a bad move. And, like, maybe they go out and get Teddy Bridgewater next year. Maybe that's their guy to replace Drew Brees after that. I mean, I don't know. You never know. But I think it's a bad move. And then the move following that, Oakland Raiders at 15, Colton Miller. I mean, what are you doing? I mean, Isaiah Wynn's on the board, and you took Colton Miller. What are you doing?
Yeah. I did not like that one at all. I think that Colton Miller his ceiling is Nate Solder, and
yeah, I
think Isaiah Wynn. You know, I'm very happy that the Patriots got Isaiah Wynn, and I think that he should be tried at tackle because he had so much success at it, you know, in the SEC. And if that does not work out, if he struggles a little bit with pass pro, just because of his lack of length, then I think he'll be moved into guard and be an elite guard in the National Football League. So he's a guy who not only offers more versatility than Colton Miller, but probably a little bit less upside because of Miller's, you know, size and athleticism. But Wynn is safer, more versatile, and you passed on him to take Colton Miller, who I think that was a huge mistake and a huge reach, like a round and a half worth of a reach on the player.
And like I've always said it too, like Colton Miller, when I was on Midday 180, like they asked me who's going to be a surprise pick in the top 20. And I said Colton Miller, offensive tackle UCLA. I just had like it was, I think, pretty well known, and I don't have sources or connections or anything like that. I had a feeling that he was going to go much sooner than he should have. And I had a second round grade on him. But he's got that weird kick step and just it's like a false step, stutters. It's so weird and it's so bad. And he's not ready. And when you got John Gruden, like he comes back from, you know, years of retirement and being in a booth. And now it just feels like he thinks he can do whatever he wants and take whoever he wants. He doesn't even care. And maybe it pans out for him. Maybe they turn him into an all-star. But I mean, Tom Cable, come on. What are you doing? So yeah. what else do we have here? How about the Packers? Jair Alexander. I mean, moving back up. You got Jair Alexander and Josh Jackson. You got cornerback number 2 and cornerback number 3. I mean, maybe for you, Josh Jackson's probably corner 4 or something. But, I mean, you get 2 top 5 corners in the draft in round 1 and round 2. That should be impossible, but it's possible for Green Bay, and it's much needed.
So as far as Green Bay goes, and I'm going to touch on those 2 players in particular, I like Jair Alexander and Josh Jackson. I had Alexander, I think, 3rd or 4th overall at the corner position, and Jackson wasn't too far behind. So I like both of them to an extent. Definitely liked Alexander a little bit more. But as far as those 2 players go, and I know the Packers needed help at corner, a ton of help at corner. Those 2 players go. Jair Alexander is a man cover corner, press man cover corner. Josh Jackson is terrible in press man. He is a off the ball, zone coverage, let the stuff happen in front of him and react to it and use his ball skills to make plays. They are wildly different prospects. And that's one of the reasons I was down on Josh Jackson, because he's not really a fit in too many systems. He's more of a fit in like a particular zone system, whereas other guys can be a little more dominating. Like Isaiah Oliver and Carlton Davis can be a little bit more dominating in press man, whereas a zone player, you're probably going to give up some yards and then react to the ball. But as far as those 2 guys go, they're so different in how they play. I'm going to be very interested to see how they scheme up coverages to kind of mask their deficiencies, because they're so different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I think with Josh Jackson too, it often seems like Green Bay in the 2nd, 3rd round, they always take best player available, and Josh Jackson was available. And I'd have to go back and look. I think Harold Landry went 2 picks before, if I remember. He went at 4.
Yeah, it was like 5 picks before, yeah.
Yeah, and then Josh Jackson. So, like, maybe, like, I don't really know what else they would have taken other than maybe Dallas Goedert. Maybe they looked at a receiver at that point, but they got
Isaiah Oliver and Carlton Davis are both available.
Yeah, and maybe they're thinking Josh Jackson's going to have a role as far as playing a little bit of safety because of the zone coverage ability and stuff like that, more so off the ball. But if that was the case, like, why wouldn't you just, if you want a guy with some versatility, why wouldn't you have just gone after like Jesse Bates or, Justin Reed? Yeah. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I like Josh Jackson a lot, and he was my corner number 2, I believe, or corner 3. So, I mean, I still think they got the picks right. They need secondary help, and when you have guys like, Aaron or Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford, and Mitchell Trubisky throwing the football, you've got to match up against Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, who you've been doing a great job breaking down on your Twitter page at Brad Kelly 17. Which, by the way, that was a slant route, guys. But your backup team, the Dallas Cowboys, Leighton Vander Esch, 19. You like it or you dislike it?
No, I did not like it. I don't mind Leighton Vander Esch. I'm gonna keep pounding this narrative. Why would they pass on Harold Landry for Leighton Vander Esch? And to add on to that, we find out yesterday, or at least some evidence came out yesterday, of David Irving, who's like their 2nd best pass rusher, is like going to be in trouble, a ton of trouble, as far as his domestic case goes. So we're talking about the Cowboys, and I love DeMarcus Lawrence, but who's your 2nd best pass rusher? Taco Charlton?
Right.
I don't like that. I think Harold Landry could come in day 1 and get you 10 sacks. I think that's the position that was needed. I understand that Vander Esch not only acts as a person who can start next to Sean Lee, but a player who can kind of replace Sean Lee if Lee's injury, history comes up again. So I didn't mind taking a linebacker, but I thought that there were going to be linebackers close to his ability available later on. Like if you go down to pick 81 or even pick 50, like a Fred Warner, even like a Josie Jewell. So I don't know. I don't necessarily think that he was so much better than those type of players to take him at 19, whereas I think that the edge class did drop off. So I wasn't a huge fan of it. I didn't really like their draft overall, to be honest. I love Connor Williams. Gallup was a reach, in my opinion, and there are better receivers available in that range and later. Guys like Kiki Kuti, Deshaun Hamilton, they were all there that they could have been taken at 81. So I was not a huge fan of their draft overall, other than the Connor Williams selection at pick 50.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the need for Leighton Vander Esch, and I often thought that going defense was what they were going to do, even after Des Bryant being the the cut and everything else. I mean, there was definitely a chance that maybe Calvin Ridley would have been their guy, I thought. But, I mean, it is what it is. Leighton Vander Esch, it makes sense. You get a guy with some really good range and athletic ability. I mean, at 6'5", he's a freakish athlete. And I think that's obviously what won a lot of teams over with him. And clearly there was, some concerns medically, like where was he with his neck injury and everything else. Maybe that was a smokescreen, but I mean, I think overall it's a good pick. And I thought they had a decent draft. I mean, Connor Williams in the second round was a steal. Michael Gallup, it makes sense to go receiver. Clearly, I think they were looking for a player maybe more so with similar size to Dez. I mean, right?
Gallup's not that big, though. He's less than 6'1", and he was only a shade over 200 pounds. I do like Cedric Wilson later on. I actually think Cedric Wilson is better than Michael Gallup. I think he separates better, and for where they got him, I think that was huge. So I think he's going to be more of a contributor than Gallup. That's well documented that I did not see it with Michael Gallup.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. They had a decent draft. It wasn't terrible. Bo in the 7th round, that's going to be interesting and fun to watch him behind.
Who cares?
I know, but it's still fun because, they always talk. I mean, Bo was overrated last year anyways, but it's still whatever. And then Dalton Schultz, that was a key pick. That was a good pick.
And I don't mind Dalton Schultz, but he's not a player who's going to catch a lot of passes, and they're literally getting rid of a guy who all he did was catch. Honestly, that's kind of how it is. If they could have gotten a guy who had at least a little bit more potential as a tight end, as far as catching passes goes, I think that would have been the better selection. As far as their O-line goes now, though, it's going to be awesome. You go left to right, you're going to have Tyron Smith, Connor Williams at left guard, Frederick, Zach Martin at right guard, and probably Lyle Collins back over at right tackle. And then Cam Fleming's kind of your swing tackle. That's awesome. And then, like I said, Dalton Schultz can block. He'll probably be out in the field blocking a ton. So it's going to be fun. The power game is going to be good. And I think Rod Smith's a better option than Bo Scarborough anyway. I think they would have been better off getting a guy who could catch the ball a little bit more, more of a scat back. But I think overall the offense is looking decent. The receivers are poor.
Yeah.
But if Cedric Wilson can come on I think that he can, and they can use Tavon Austin a little bit as an explosive player, then they can at least get by with who they have as the pass catchers.
Yeah. Well, and who knows? Maybe they'll go out and get Kobe Fleener for you. You never know.
They should go out and get Des Bryant.
Not happening, dude. Not happening. It's over. The dream's over for him. I did see something, though. Who was it? Somebody said Des Bryant's probably going to go to Green Bay. It was Jason Witten, I think. He said he thinks he's going to go to Green Bay. So I don't know. Be on the lookout for that. So let's close the first round out and move on to our winners and losers. Anybody else after Vander Esch and everything else? Was there a surprise? I mean, I think we can probably agree with the Steelers, but anybody else?
Yeah, pick 31, the Patriots. Taking Sony Michel. You know what? I'm gonna save that for a little bit later. We're gonna talk about the Patriots in a few minutes.
How about Mike Hughes, 30th overall? Just the Vikings, dude. They draft so well. They don't care. They don't have a huge need at corner, but it makes sense just to take this guy. You can play him in the slot, you can play him on the outside. He's got experience doing both, and I think it's a good fit. I think
it's a good fit too. Like you said, you can never have too much secondary depth.
Yeah,
and so I like that. They definitely needed an interior offensive lineman, and they took Brian O'Neill from Pittsburgh in the second round, who will more than likely kick inside. So I think they did fill that need with a very capable player, Brian O'Neill. So yeah. Though I was worried when they didn't take Will Hernandez or Connor Williams at pick, was it 30? At pick 30, I think they did fill that need later on. So I think that taking Mike Hughes as sort of a luxury type pick worked out for them overall.
Yeah, and they got Jalen Holmes, edge rusher out of Ohio State, who I'm a big fan of. I think he can be very good. And they got Colby Gossett, guard out of Appalachian State. So, I mean, they've got they added some offensive line help. They did some things. They drafted a kicker, which is always odd, but it is what it is. They got Tyler Conklin, tight end, out of Central Michigan, which we saw down in Mobile. So, he's a development kid, but he's got some red zone presence, and he's a decent blocker. So, I thought they had a pretty good draft. And, the Steelers taking Terrell Edmunds at pick 28. The only cool thing about the whole thing was Ryan Shazier announcing the pick, which was cool to see him up and walking and everything else. But Edmunds, what a reach. I mean, I didn't watch him, but I couldn't believe it. You don't take a day 3 prospect in the first round. So it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Especially with Jesse Bates available.
Yeah, dude, it doesn't like Justin Reed, Jesse Bates, even Josh Jackson. Like you passed on Mike Hughes. Like you need some type of secondary help, and Edmonds just it just doesn't make any sense. What about Rashad Penny to the Seahawks? I love the pick.
I don't. I think it's a reach. I mean, it's not anything against Rashad Penny per se, though I wasn't a huge fan of him. But you took him with Ronald Jones, Darius Geis, and Nick Chubb there.
Well, yeah.
I don't like that because I think all of them are better than Rashad Penny, and I think that if they had just they have so many needs. And they have so many needs on the offensive line, and there were good offensive linemen there that I did not like them taking a running back who can't block to save his life. How are you going to protect Russell Wilson? We still don't know. If they were going to go running back, I would have went a different running back. So I did not like that pick very much.
I think
me on it. Let me hear it. Sell me on their pick.
No, I like the fit. I think it's a good fit. I think you're looking for more of a downhill runner. Trust me, I'm here for the Darius Geis love. Why he didn't go? He should have went pick 43. Okay, like I totally understand it.
He went pick 20.
Yeah. He should have went pick 20 exactly. And but no, I like you traded down. You got additional picks. Did they bomb the rest of the draft? Absolutely. Like outside of Shaquem Griffin, they bombed the rest of the whole draft.
Don't diss my boy Poona Ford right now. Come on.
Well, okay, good pick. Jamarco Jones at pick 168 was a blessing, but everything else, it was just like you took a punter before you took an offensive tackle, And I just think Rashad Penny, what you're looking to do, again, you're trying to get that downhill runner, trying to become more efficient in the red zone as far as running the football. Penny provides that for you. I think he is a strong back as far as, as a ball carrier. Yeah, needs to fix his blocking and everything else. Not much of a receiver, but I don't think that matters at this point. Like you're just trying to run and establish the run game. If that's the guy with Penny, sure. But like you took Rasheem Green when Martinez Rankin was still on the board. Even Orlando Brown, athletic ability, terrible, but talent-wise, like he's still decent, and you can find a role for him on your offensive line, and you passed him and you took Rasheem Green, an edge rusher, which just doesn't make a lot of sense. You took a tight end, which makes sense in the sense of you don't have Jimmy Graham anymore or Luke Wilson, but I can't get behind their entire draft, but I like the Penny pick again. So we'll see how it all pans out. By the way, I just need to say, Justin Jones, pick 84, third round. I freaking called it, third round, day 2 guy, and he did it. So shout out to me because I don't get a lot of stuff right. So I'm gonna toot my own horn on that one. But let's get to winners and losers and then close this thing out. You can start with a loser or a winner. Your choice.
I'm going to start with a winner. I'm going to preface this by saying I do like a few other teams. Some other teams that I want to mention before I get into my number one winner are the Los Angeles Chargers. I really, really like what the Chargers did. Being able to sit back and still get Derwin James, I think was huge. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Uchenna Nwosu. They got Justin Jones, like you said. You're a huge fan of him. And I really like Kaiir White. Really being able to come downhill, be that overhang position, and really probably be able to play next to Derwin James. Additionally, I'm a huge fan of Dylan Cantrell. I've mentioned that before. I think he's a versatile guy. He wins. He's great body control. And then even later on, I like Justin Jackson as a potential RB2 behind Melvin Gordon at Northwestern. So I really like what the Chargers did overall and really not being able to have to move around the draft too much in order to get that done. Additionally, the Chicago Bears – getting Roquan at 8, I think he's a safe pick. Big fan of Roquan Smith. He's exactly what they need. They need a linebacker, in my opinion, especially with Freeman retiring / getting suspended for 2 years, whatever that case was. James Daniels out of Iowa, probably a top 2 center in the class. Getting that in the second round, I think, is huge. And then Anthony Miller, my guy, one of my guys, top 3 receiver for me, getting him at pick 51. Those 3. Even like Kylie Fitz later on, who I think has some potential as a day 3 edge rusher, and Javon Wims, same thing, a potential, pass catcher with a big body. But those 3 guys in particular, between Roquan Smith, James Daniels, and Anthony Miller, is a huge way to start kind of the second portion of their rebuild. Get Mitchell Trubisky some weapons, get him some protection, and strengthen the middle of their defense. But number one winner for me is the Tennessee Titans. I think that was pretty obvious the way I was talking about Harold Landry. The fact that they were able to get him at pick 41. Also getting Rashaan Evans, who I wanted the Patriots to get at pick 23. They scooped him up at pick 22. I did not like that, but I do love the Titans' overall draft. I think Mike Vrabel really hit a home run. If you look at their pass rush last season, we're talking about real quick. They were talking about Derek Morgan having 7.5 sacks. Derek Morgan is entering his 32-year-old season. He's about to be 32, and he's in the last year of his contract. Brian Orakpo, 7 sacks. Brian Orakpo is entering the last year of his contract, and he's going to be Derek Morgan's going to be 29. Sorry, Brian Orakpo is going to be 32. So we have 2 guys entering the last year of their deals. Jarrell Casey signed for a long time. He had 6 sacks last year, but he's only a defensive tackle. And then we have Wesley Woodyard, who is a linebacker who's more of a blitzer. He only has 2 years left on his deal. So they desperately needed pass rush, and they got, in my opinion, the best pass rusher in the class at pick 41. A guy who has the best bend, the best burst in the draft class, in my opinion. Throwing Rashaan Evans, who's a hitter at linebacker, and I think they hit A+ for their first 2 picks. Looking past their first 2 picks, I do like Dane Cruikshank out of Arizona. Jonah Tulls from NUT Scouting was a huge fan of Cruikshank. I think he had him in his top 50. He's kind of like a Minkah Fitzpatrick light. He kind of plays the same role, does the same type of things at a slightly lower level. And then even looking into their undrafted free agents, I'm a huge fan of Deontay Burnett. I think Deontay Burnett was like an early day 3, maybe even late day 2 player, a receiver out of USC, slot receiver, get Marcus Mariota more weapons. And then 2 guys who I like as well are Aquan Wildly and Larry Rose III from New Mexico State. They're in that Dion Lewis mold of scat back, pass catcher type of player. Now, Dion Lewis does have potential out after 2020, so I think between Aquan Wildly and Larry Rose III that they got 2 guys who, one of which will make the team and kind of become that Dion Lewis player type of player, and Dion Lewis insurance because he has had injury issues in the past, to be like that 3rd down running back. And then finally, Damon Webb, safety of Ohio State, I thought was a day 3 player. They got him as an undrafted free agent. They didn't have to give up anything to get him. Another guy who on the back end of their defense has some potential. So I think overall their whole draft and even the players that they were able to get in undrafted free agency really, really helped their defense, definitely helped their defense, getting 3 defensive players in the draft and adding a guy like Damon Webb, and then adding some fun pieces in Deontay Burnett and Aquan Wildly and potentially Larry Rose III, pass catchers for their young QB Marcus Mariota.
I think you hit it all on the head. I think it's strictly criminal that Tennessee got Rashaan Evans and Harold Landry. Like it's
Deontay Burnett undrafted.
It shouldn't even happen. Like it shouldn't be allowed. And somebody allowed it. Like maybe it's the New England Patriots' fault. They allowed it. I don't know. Which I know you'll get into in a moment with them. But I'm going to talk with my loser. And maybe it's really obvious, but it's the Oakland Raiders. And they sucked on draft day. On the first round, the second round, the third round, all the way through the 7th round. Everything they did outside of Maurice Hurst, everything sucked. Everything. Like, let me start at the top here, okay? You traded down with Arizona. You got an additional first, a third, and a 5th round pick. And the first was, the 15th overall pick. You got Colton Miller, offensive tackle. We talked about him. Very much a surprise, but like I mentioned, I thought he would go in the top 20, and Oakland took him, and they've got an offensive line coach that Tom Cable I don't know what, I just don't know. Tom Cable's very hit or more so miss more than anything else when it comes to developing guys. And it's totally a Tom Cable guy, but Colton Miller just not pro ready. You're going to throw him into the fire probably right away. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I understand you want to keep Derek Carr upright. You want to get the ground game going, which, by the way, you would have thought going after a running back in this draft, you have Marshawn Lynch. And I understand they've got some younger guys like DeAndre Washington running the football behind him and stuff like that. But realistically speaking, you need to go out and get one of these backs. This was a running back heavy class. You had plenty of picks. Guys like a Mark Walton or, I don't know, Nick Chubb or something would have been better than what they did in this draft. Colton Miller, again, first round, terrible. You passed on Harold Landry. You passed on Derwin James, which is just disgusting. Like, I understand you don't have a huge need at safety, but you passed on Derwin James. You passed on Jair Alexander, and you needed a corner. Like, you just let go of Sean Smith, and you don't really have anything. Carey signed with somebody else. I think who's his name? Tyson Carey, something like that. I don't know. It's something Carey, and you let him go. You don't have anybody at corner. Second round, okay. Just listen to this, what falls after. And I thought it was bad this happens every draft where you look back and you're like, okay, this team took this player and they passed on this player, this player, this player. And for the Lions, that's how I feel like this draft was for them. But when you look at the Oakland Raiders in the second round, they took P.J. Hall at pick 57. Isaiah Oliver, a corner, went pick 58 to Atlanta. Washington took Darius Geis at 59. James Washington at 60. DJ Shark, Brian O'Neill, and Carlton Davis. All of those guys are better than PJ Hall. So what are you doing? You're taking guys with some upside and hoping that it pans out for you. Then you took Brandon Parker, the offensive tackle, at pick 65. You took him before Lorenzo Carter, BJ Hill, Justin Reed, Royce Freeman. Like I mentioned, you needed another running back, I think, and you passed on a very talented one in Darius Geis and now Royce Freeman. And then you take Brandon Parker, like out of North Carolina A&T. I think he was at the Senior Bowl, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And he didn't do much. So what are you doing? And then Arden Key. I understand the upside with Arden Key, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to work. All right? It's not panning out. He's going to be a bust. That's why he went in the third round. It's not even a bust. It just means he's not panning out. Okay? Nick Nelson, the corner at pick 110. What corners were available before that or around that time? Well, Anthony Everett out of Alabama. Yep. Better than Nick Nelson. I'm sorry. And Nick, yeah, and Nick Nelson's coming back from I believe a torn ACL. He's had a ton of injuries in the past, and it just doesn't make sense, dude. And then Mo Hurst in the fifth round, you took a punter at pick 173. Let's see what falls after pick 170. And I get it. Like Townsend was probably the only need that they took because you let go of King, but John Kelly was there at 176. Just a terrible draft for them. So they get a huge F all the way across the board. I don't agree with what they did at all. Like, yeah, they added Jordy Nelson. They lost Michael Crabtree. Yes, they have Amari Cooper. They still have Marshawn Lynch, but Marshawn Lynch was not that good last year. So, like, what are they doing? So I thought it was a terrible draft. But move on to your loser.
So my loser is your New England Patriots.
New England Patriots.
Yeah, no, the listener, the Patriots fans who are listening. I don't necessarily think that they had the worst draft, but I do want to sound off on how bad I think they did. Isaiah went at 23. I think that's a great pick. And I'll tell you why. He's like I said before, he's a guy I think you can try at tackle. And when you have probably the best offensive line coach in the history of the game, and Dante Scarnecchia, he could probably turn that into a great pick. And I love Isaiah Wynn. He was the number 7 overall player for me. So I do love that pick. But let's get into the rest of their draft. Sony Michel at pick 31, a player that is not a need, a player that, is kind of, to be honest, a little bit redundant to James White as far as projecting as more of a pass catcher. And once again, I think that there are better running backs available at that point in time. If you want a guy who's going to be a better runner, I think Chubber's your guy. A better pass catcher, Ronald Jones is your guy. A better overall player, better power runner, better everything. Darius Geis was there. Literally leaps and bounds better than Sony Michel. Darius Geis is there, and they pass on him for Sony Michel. All right, so let's go to pick 43. They're going to trade out of it when Lieutenant Owosu is there to be your versatile piece in the front 7. So eventually they move back up to pick 56 to take Duke Dawson, a nickel corner with Isaiah Oliver and Carlton Davis still on the board. Perfect fits for your system. Perfect fits to be a press man corner across from Stephon Gilmore. Perfect fits to learn for a year behind Jason McCourty before taking over the starting spot and just keeping Eric Rowe as your nickel corner. You brought in competition for your nickel spot at pick 56 when you trade up to get there. When you trade to pick 56, Isaiah Oliver, Darius Geis, and Carlton Davis are all there, and you take Duke Dawson. I'm not even hating on Duke Dawson as a player, but he's not what they need, and he's a terrible value at that point in time. So, all right, let's move on to the rest of the draft. We're talking two linebackers who are extremely redundant, big hitting type linebackers. Both of them are 250 plus, I think. One from Purdue and Juwan Bentley and Christian Sam out of Arizona State. Very redundant in the 5th and 6th rounds. Linebacker, realistically, you need a guy who's going to be a little bit more speed right now. You have Dante Hightower, who's 265 pounds or whatever he is. And then you have Kyle Van Noy, who's a little bit better as a sub player, but you need some speed next to Dante Hightower, sideline to sideline coverage players, and they did not get that. They got physical, thunderous, downhill type of linebackers. So once again, linebackers that don't really fit your system. Let's look a little bit forward. They take Braxton Berrios in the 6th round. Braxton Berrios is extremely limited as a player. Not only is he limited as a player, there are better slot receivers available. Trey Quinn is better. Trey Quinn's better. He can play on the outside too. He has better size, better length. He has better hands. He runs better routes. Deontay Burnett's better. Deontay Burnett more explosive, despite him running a 4.7 on tape and his agility. He's more explosive than Braxton Berrios, and he's younger. He has more potential. And then your quarterback that you take, the one quarterback you take in the draft, is Danny Etling. Are you kidding me? Why even take a QB at that point in the 7th round? Just go to free agency and take the undrafted free agency, take the best one available. Danny Etling? Is that a joke? He's terrible. He shouldn't even been drafted. I don't think he should have even been signed. I'm sorry, Danny, if you're listening. But I think that there are better quarterbacks available in undrafted free agency. If you're going to take a quarterback of the future, take one in the middle rounds and try to develop him instead of taking one early on. But don't take one in the 7th round who's never going to pan out. All right, so let's look at the undrafted free agency. Did they get any hits there? Their best one that they got is J.C. Jackson. I actually like him as a corner. I actually like him kind of almost close to Duke Dawson. Similar type of player at 5'10", over 200 pounds, physical. Can be a guy who maybe projects as a poor man's Malcolm Butler. But other than that, they didn't really get anyone. Their next best undrafted free agent, in my opinion, is Chris Lacey, who was the 3rd best receiver at Oklahoma State. Not a good undrafted free agent class, in my opinion. Overall, you look past Isaiah Wynn, despite them getting some players that I like. I don't dislike Jordan Michelle. I don't dislike Duke Dawson as players, but compared to who they could have gotten, they could have taken Harold Landry at 31. They could have taken Isaiah Oliver or Carlton Davis at pick 56 when they traded back up. If you put that all into a spectrum, I think the Patriots had a terrible, terrible draft.
Are you done, or you still want to keep going?
I'm fired up right now, but I'm done.
I know, man. I'm loving it. I mean, I thought they had a decent draft, but you're right. I mean, they passed on a ton of talented players. And to just relay back to Duke Dawson, because I love getting you fired up about a nickel corner, or a nickel back. I'm sorry. We don't say nickel corner on the show.
We don't say slot corner.
Slot corner. That's what it was. So back to the slot corner. No, so Duke Dawson, I mean, seriously, why would you take that type of player at that spot when Isaiah Oliver clearly is on the board, some other guys as well, like you listed, but it's not like you're playing against, a ton of spread offenses like in your division, and you're not playing against elite quarterbacks. Like, you're going to play against Josh Allen or A.J. McCarron, Josh McCown, Teddy Bridgewater, or potentially Sam Darnold. So, like, clearly you're worried about Darnold, and then you got Ryan Tannehill and Brock Osweiler in Miami. So what are you doing? You don't need to worry about what's going on in the slot. You don't have to worry about the nickel guy.
And even the thing is, like, if you look at Stephon Gilmore as the number 1 corner in the NFL, I think Stephon Gilmore is a very good corner. Jason McCourty is probably good for another year or two at his age. Being able to play next to his twin is going to be huge for him as well, I think, because of their communication. And then you have Eric Rowe as a nickel who has starting experience on the outside, but is best suited as a nickel and has had a lot of success as a nickel. And then they had the kid from the Rutgers kid as another depth guy who ended up getting hurt last year. But even so, if you're going to take a corner, take a guy who can develop for a year or two behind Jason McCourty or become a starter in year 1 who has potential. Isaiah Oliver fits that mold. Carlton Davis fits that mold. Isaac Yiadon fits that mold. You're taking competition for Eric Rowe in the 2nd round. You're taking a guy who might not even start at nickel in his rookie year in the 2nd round.
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I like Michelle a lot as a player. He was one of my favorite players in the entire draft. But at pick 31, that just didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, take Lamar Jackson. Screw it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just do something different. You didn't need another running back. You have so many guys in that room right now. Screw the running back by committee, especially with how they operated. Like, you could have got an undrafted free agent running back and made it work. But Michelle is a very talented guy. There is some serious upside there, but just, I don't know. clearly they don't. I don't think they even worry about it. They got Tom Brady. You guys will be fine. So don't even worry about it. Okay.
Oh yeah, I mean, and the thing is, I bet Sony Michel's gonna have. I bet he has a really good rookie season. I bet he puts up good numbers, and becomes a very good player. I just don't like taking him for where they could have gotten,
Other guys. Yeah.
Other guys. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not even anything against him. I think Duke Dawson down the line will become their nickel corner. In a year or two, I think he's going to be a starting nickel corner in the NFL for the Patriots. I think he'll be a good player, but compared to who they could have gotten at a more premier position as well, guys have more potential at a more premier position, I don't like the pick.
Yeah. Well, maybe they were playing Fortnite while they were doing those picks. I don't know.
Probably were.
So I'm going to move to my winner, and then we'll get you guys out of here. I'm going to go in with the San Francisco 49ers. I loved what they did. I thought it was a great draft. I mean, my number one winner was Cincinnati, but I've already talked about them. I've wrote about them. I'm done with the Bengals. Okay, I've talked enough Bengals for the rest of my life. The 49ers, though, Mike McGlinchey at pick number 9, great pick. He's going to be their right tackle, and I think that's best for him. I think he's best suited to be a right tackle. He's not going to play over Joe Staley at left tackle, but their offensive line, left tackle will be Joe Staley. Left guard will be Lincoln Tomlinson, Jonathan Cooper. A decent duo there. I think you can manage at left guard with that. Weston Richburg at center is a huge upside pick, and it's got tons of potential for them as a center. Josh Garnett coming back at right guard is great. They also have Eric Magnuson out of Michigan. He's playing right guard. He struggles with inside moves. I watched a lot of him last year, did some scouting reports on him, but he is a talented player and he's plugged inside. And now you have Mike McGlinchey at right tackle, which I think is fantastic. Second round, they got your boy, Dante Pettis. Shout out to you for getting wide receiver 1 all the way up to round number 2 at pick 44. I think it's a great fit for them. There's a lot of upside with him, as we've talked about many times. You have Pierre Garçon. You bring in Marquise Goodwin and Trent Taylor as well to the mix, and now you have Dante Pettis. And then in the 7th round, they even got Richie James. So their wide receiver room is very talented. I think Pettis with Garoppolo, it could be a duo that maybe has an impact right away. And I think those first 2 picks, they hit. Fred Warner, linebacker out of BYU, he's more of a will, can play somewhat like a slot guy because he's got some really good coverage ability and he's got that range. And you throw him into the mix with Reuben Foster, Eli Harold, Malcolm Smith. I think it's a good mix of linebackers, and it sounds like he's going to play as a Mike. At least that's where he's listed, but I wouldn't be surprised if he played more of a Will, maybe a little bit of the Sam, and played on the outside because of his athletic ability and range. But again, we'll see. Tavarius Moore out of Southern Miss, the safety. I did not watch him, but I've heard a ton of great stuff about him, and their secondary is just stacked. I mean, they've got Richard Sherman, Tart, Jimmy Ward, Weatherspoon, Kawan Williams. They even signed McFadden, the corner out of Florida State.
And they drafted DJ Reed.
Yeah, and they drafted DJ Reed. You add more to the mix at safety. I mean, and Adrian Colbert, don't sleep on him, out of Miami, Florida last year. I got to speak with him last year. He's a very talented, humbling young man. He's very, very good after a rookie season, and he's only going to get better. And then, again, you added McFadden out of Florida State. 2 years ago, he was fantastic. He had like 8 interceptions, and this past year was awful, tested poorly at the combine, went undrafted, but there's upside there. You bring in Richard Sherman, a very well-known vet. I just love what they did overall as a whole with guys like Kentavious Street, a little bit of a reach, in my opinion, with some of the guys that were on the board. But at pick 128, you get an edge rusher to add to the mix with Earl Mitchell, DeForest Buckner, Solomon Thomas, Eric Armstead. He's not going to play right away. He's coming back from a torn ACL. But again, there's some upside there. We've talked about him. He is an athletic freak. He's strong. So overall, I thought they had a great draft. Marcel Harris, a safety out of Florida. Julian Taylor out of Temple, a defensive tackle. 2 guys I don't know really much about, but they're depth guys, 6th and 7th round picks, and it's fine. So I think out of all their picks, I would say 5 or 6 of them are going to be guys that probably contribute right away in special teams, starting offensive roles, defensive roles, all that good stuff. So I thought they had a really good draft. And I looked at their UDFAs, undrafted free agents, and really the only name I knew was McFadden out of Florida State. So they added some offensive linemen, Alan Knott, a center out of South Carolina. But there is another name, actually, Connor Wentz, tight end out of North Dakota State. I'm wondering if he's related to Carson Wentz. It's a mini camp tryout, though, so I'm assuming it is. So Wentz is probably not the most common name, but then again, I don't know what's going on in North Dakota, so we'll see. But overall, I liked what San Francisco did. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, sports betting and all that stuff, that's a big topic in the sports world. If I had to go on the over-under of, I don't know, let's say 9 wins, I'm going to take the over with the 49ers. I think that they could be the best team coming out of the NFC West. I'm going to be honest.
So I was actually going to say over under 8.5 and have you answer, but you already beat me to it. We're starting to get into each other's heads. But once again, I to touch on all that, I agree with a ton of what you said. Like you said, Dante Pettis, I think, is a perfect fit for their offense. Perfect fit in the Shanahan system. He's a guy that can really is a separator, and that's what they need. And he's a nuanced route runner, which is also what they need to run because they run a lot of like play action type of stuff too. They have guys who they're going to be given a little bit more time to get open, and Pettis has that ability. He's shown that ability plenty of times. McGlinchey, you got a guy who's going to protect your franchise quarterback. I like Richie James late. I like DJ Reed and McFadden and more. All his guys have potential in the back end of their defense. Fred Warner, I think, is a great pick for them because he doesn't necessarily have to come in and start right away, though I think he's capable of it. But if Reuben Foster, it depends on his situation. And I think if Foster isn't available, that Warner can step in and play right away. Yeah. Love Kentavious Street. I don't necessarily, like you said, he was taken before Josh Sweat, which is a little bit questionable because Kentavious Street is coming off that torn ACL. But I do like Street as a player, like I've mentioned before. So I like their draft overall. But you actually forgot the most important piece of their draft.
Who's that?
Jimmy Garoppolo. Their second-round pick was on Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh, look at you. Tricky. I see what you did there. Well, sorry.
When you add him into it, too, if you really want to think about it that way, absolutely home run A++ of a draft.
Oh, yeah. Home run draft, and you got him for the next 5 years because you locked him up with the contract and everything else, and you brought in Jerick McKinnon, who I think he's a starting back. He should have been a starting back for a long time, and I think he's going to do very well outside of Minnesota. You do have Matt Breida and Joe Williams, who were 2 rookies last year to back him up. You move on from Carlos Hyde. You don't have to worry about the injury risks and all that injury potential that comes with Carlos Hyde. So some people will dog them for the Mike McGlinchey pick, but I think it was a great pick because, yes, they passed on Derwin James and they passed on some other players, but, like Tremaine Edmonds and stuff like that. But Mike McGlinchey, you need to protect your $100 million investment in Jimmy Garoppolo.
What they needed, exactly.
Exactly. You needed to get him. And again, Joe Staley's not getting any younger, and maybe McGlinchey plays left tackle. But again, I've always said I think he's best suited to play right tackle. And even if you get your right tackle with the 9th overall pick, it doesn't hurt you because of how many picks they had. They already have their quarterback. They have weapons in place. And like you mentioned with Pettis, the route running ability, the return ability, everything else. And like I said, I think we could see an impact with Pettis from day one as he becomes, more comfortable with this offense and with Jimmy Garoppolo. But Garcon, go ahead.
And I was thinking about it. I was on a San Francisco 49ers podcast. I think it was Locked On 49ers a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about their potential third down unit. So if you think about who could be on the field on third down for them, a big play. I always start thinking about who would be on the field on third and 8. So let's go left to right on the offensive line. Joe Staley, we know is a left tackle. Richburg, we know is the center, and we know McGlinchey's probably right tackle. As far as their guards go, Laken Tomlinson, Josh Garnett, and Jonathan Cooper are 3 guys who have who drafted highly and have kind of been underwhelming. But basically, that's a competition for 2 spots. Those 3 players, they all have potential. I still think Garnett can be the guy that many thought he would be coming out of Stanford. So I think the offensive line is set. Obviously, you have Garoppolo at QB, McKinnon, who's a great pass catcher at running back. And then we have Garcon, Marquise Goodwin, and Dante Pettis at receiver. Those 3 receivers. And then it's kind of like that last pass catcher or blocker spot can be between Richie James, Trent Taylor. If you want to go tight end, it's George Kittle, who has some potential going into the second year. And if you want a fullback, it's Kyle Juszczyk, who can catch the ball. He can block well. He's huge in the play-action game out there. Mm-hmm. So their third down unit, they're going to be a team who's going to pick up a lot of those and be able to really throw the ball because they have the protection now. They have the fullback. They have the tight end. They have depth at they have a pass catcher running back, and they have depth at receiver. So I think if you look at their offense, they are set at offense going forward. And I think they could probably use a size guy receiver maybe in the future in a year or 2. Can they kind of have more speed guys at the moment? If they could get a size type of player, that'll probably be the last missing piece of their offense.
Yeah, and let's not forget, Kyle Shanahan's calling this offense. He's running this team, and John Lynn's doing a great job adding pieces to the puzzle through the draft, through free agency. And again, Kyle Shanahan calling the plays. This offense is going to be just fine. And I'm like just talking about it. Like clearly, the third down stuff, it always depends on down and distance. Like if it's third and short, you're probably bringing in your fullback. You're running, McKinnon up the middle. Or Breida or something like that on those short yardage situations. And they do still have Jeremy McNichols out of Boise State, who I thought could have made it through Tampa Bay, but that wasn't the case. But it all depends on that stuff. But they're going to be fine. And I'm like excited to like draft Jimmy Garoppolo in fantasy football now. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. But yeah, you got anything else? What's some stuff that you're working on for us over at cover1.net and of course the Twitter stuff?
So like you mentioned earlier, working on a series of articles, really kind of highlighting and outlining the best receiver groups in the country in college football, really throughout the FBS. I really want to get to around 10, maybe 12 teams who I think have the best units of wide receiver. And this isn't necessarily putting out scouting reports, or it's not putting out like, oh, I think he's a first-round pick next year. It's kind of saying these are who, in my opinion, the top 10 receiver groups, and these will be the guys to look out for next college football season. When you turn on college football on Saturdays, you say like, this is one of the teams that has three really good receivers, and not necessarily pro prospects, though obviously some of them are going to be pro prospects. It's more of this is going to be one of the best passing units in college football next year because they have all these good wide receivers. And whether it could be like two like stud receivers or if it's four pretty good ones who are very, so their units very deep, or a team like Ole Miss, who I've already talked about, who have three guys who are all very good and they don't have much else. They have pretty much nothing else other than those three guys, but those three guys could all be drafted next year. It's kind of all a different mix. Some of them are young. Alabama has three rising sophomores who are all super talented. They're all top 10 receiver prospects coming in the year before, and they had good freshman years. And now that Robert Foster and Calvin Ridley are gone, they're going to really get step up. Got a good receivers coach out in Alabama too, so I've read about them. So it's going to be a series of articles. I've done Ole Miss so far. I've done Alabama so far. Currently working on South Carolina. Currently falling in love with Bryan Edwards as a receiver. Bryan Edwards, 6'3", 215 pounds. He is everything people wanted Cortland Sutton to be this year. Bryan Edwards is. And I'm going to talk about that a lot in the next year. I feel like if he progresses the way I think he will. But a couple other teams that I'll probably get to as well. Probably look at Notre Dame. Probably look at Arizona State with N'Keal Harry out there. And a few other teams who I think have the best receiver groups. And they'll probably hope to get 10 to 12 teams out of it throughout the summer.
Awesome. Well, guys, definitely check it out. He did put one out there with Ole Miss, like he mentioned, which they call themselves the NWO, which is, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a child here, but it's too sweet. Like that's too sweet.
The NWO is the nasty wideouts. I think it's a sick nickname.
It's awesome. That's so awesome. Be sure to follow Brad at Brad Kelly 17. I really hope he gets to Felton Davis of Michigan State, who I think is a very underrated receiver. I don't think their receiving core will be featured on this, but shout out to Felton Davis, a fellow Spartan. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft. Like always, hit that follow button, guys. I did put up Peace Out last week on Ed Oliver, and I think a very good piece on Jamon Moore regarding how he fits the Green Bay Packers. And I think it's a great pick, but definitely check that stuff out at cover1.net. But until next time, this is Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast.